So I'm going to talk about the Roaring 2020s because I'm really excited about it, but it's not necessarily going to be a cakewalk per se. There's a song that I wanted to come into. Rockets, anyone remember? There's some older folks here and some young people who are pretty hip. Rockets, moonshots, spin it on the have-nots, money, we make it. Before we see it, you take it. That's where we are right now. We're in the beginning of the fourth industrial revolution, which is really intriguing, but we're also being held back by real ideological political forces. And I don't know that we'll be able to live up to the promise of all of the amazing, great things that we've got going on as long as this is the case. 2 years ago, this real famous analyst over at Bank of America came out with what he called 14 moonshots. These are just like the ultimate moonshots. Some of them seem pretty cool, right? And not too far-fetched. 6G, all right, at some point we'll really have 5G and then we'll get 6G. Bionic humans, everyone, I mean, some people remember the Bionic Man, right? Steve Austin, come on, my man, yeah, right? Huh, yeah, so some of it doesn't seem so far-fetched. Holograms, it's been over a decade since that famous hologram of Tupac at Coachella, right? So holograms, that's not too far. Metaverse is here and nobody cares, you know. So these moonshots are just absolutely phenomenal. It tells you where humankind can go, how we dream big and dream large. Some of it, though, is a little bit like, okay, the air taxis are just about here. My only problem is I hope they ever come in my size, because they ain't getting in that one, all right? I'm going to tell you right now. They need about 4 more blades on that bad boy. But we're here, right? Do they come in large? So we're making that move. We're making that transition. Remember, the 1920s was a decade of amazing transitions. That's what the 2020s are going to be about as well. Again, I'm going to get to the sobering part of it, though. This year, one of the major firms, Bank of America, came out and they said, there's your investment themes. In the 2010s, it was about the 1%, Wall Street, inequality, capital, quantitative easing, climate change, monetary excess, tax cuts, stocks and bonds, financial assets, globalization, democracy, peace, and deflation. They're saying that the next 10 years will be 99%, Main Street, inclusion, labor, AI, net zero, fiscal excess, bailouts, cash and commodities, real assets. I think some of this stuff is spot on, right? I mean, and I think I've heard some folks here talk about, you know, these real assets, cash, commodities, protectionism, autocracy, war, and inflation. This 2020s list is already starting to form. You can see it, right? You see the war part of it. You know, listen, the failure of democracy is really shocking around the world. How many countries have rejected democracy? Some of that's our fault. We were supposed to be the shining city on the hill, and a lot of folks were watching us from afar and decided maybe, you know, whatever other political system they're picking. 99% Main Street, inclusion, labor. I worry about those things because they're all just really ways of creating greater political control. Big government. And as investors, you don't want big government. As people who love freedom, you don't want gargantuan government. There's limited resources, there's limited money, and there's almost enough space for one to be dominant. So one of my big concerns is going in the direction that we're going into. Big government is absolutely what we don't want. The political control we do not want. And they get it by promising certain things. Oh, we're going to make sure things are better for the 99%. They really cannot do that. And most attempts that they make to do it are either BS or they backfire. Free money is a big issue right now, a huge issue. How many have ever heard of modern monetary theory? It's become very popular. AOC really has pushed it pretty hard. We just lived through modern monetary theory. That $1.9 trillion that was sent out as supposedly COVID aid, when we didn't need it as COVID aid, was a grand experiment in modern monetary theory. $1.9 trillion so-called COVID relief bill, that was just really free money. And the speeches I gave last year, I was all about the theme, The Hangover, the movie, because exactly you could see what was going to happen. It's a lot of fun. When you just get money for nothing and you're told to go spend it, it's a lot of fun. But the aftermath, we're living the aftermath right now, and it's not a lot of fun. By the way, here's a secret. Here's an interesting thing about that $1.9 trillion. This comes from Stanford University. It was done in January of this year. Absolutely phenomenal. If you get a chance, Google this whole research report. They lay out how that entire $1.9 trillion will eventually all end up in the pockets of the 1%. So when a politician goes and says, listen, look what I did for you, Main Street. Remember that list, the 2020s, the 99% Main Street? When the politician goes down and says to them, look what I did for you. I churned out trillions of dollars just for you. Well, there's a thing called propensity to consume. And poor and middle class people have it greater than anyone else. Essentially, it's like when you don't have money and you get some, you spend it. I mean, come on, right? It's a windfall. You're not used to it. They know you're going to spend it. They know you're going to spend it. I remember when President Obama was in office and they passed extra food stamps. They were pushing and everyone was debating about it. And I saw an interview with Nancy Pelosi. And she said, well, it's a thing called the multiplier effect. If we give people if we give people $1.50 worth of food stamps instead of $1, they'll spend $2. So the people that are giving this money understand what they're doing. They want you to get this money because when you go to the mall with your $1,500 check, you're going to spend $2,000. It's going to look great. You're going to say, I had nominal GDP of X. It's going to look fantastic. But what did we trigger? We triggered the highest rate of inflation in 4 decades. Inflation that we still cannot get rid of. So those who have a propensity to spend right away. Already, by the way, this is called trickle up. There's no such thing as trickle down economics, it's trickle up. Years ago, before the internet took off, I would tell people that my best example of trickle up economics was the day after Thanksgiving. People are stuffed, they can barely move, but they get up because they want to catch the sales. And they're so eager to get billionaires their money, they run over the security guards, they kill people. That's trickle up economics. That's what we are. We're a consumer-based economy. We cannot wait to make rich people richer. So how are we doing so far? Well, at the peak when this money was going out, economists came up with this term. Well, I guess it always existed. I never heard of it before. Excess cash or excess savings. Had anyone ever heard the term excess savings before? I mean, really, that would trip me out. I mean, I'm not bullshitting. When I first heard it, I thought it was like something for white folks. Like, I'm like, well, maybe. I was asking my white friends about this. What's this excess savings? Because when we had a little cash, we put it in a coffee jar. You know, you might have like 20 bucks. You know what I mean? You might hide 10 bucks in a shoe, but excess savings? What the hell is excess savings? America had $2.1 trillion in excess savings. $2.1 trillion. Apparently now, this is according to the San Francisco Fed, we're at 190 billion of that, so we've spent a lot of it. So what's happened because of all of this? Well, the deficit spending has really taken a massive toll, a massive, massive toll on us. You know, the 2-year yield hit 5% a couple of weeks ago. The stock market got hammered. The bond market, which by the way, could for the very first time in history have 3 negative years in a row. Never happened before. Never happened before. And while we do like to point the finger at Chairman Powell of the Federal Reserve, a lot of this is out of his control. What happened the other day was they tried to auction off some long-term bonds, some 30-year bonds. There were no buyers. Now, there's a thing in the bond market where they say, if the yield is right, you'll always find buyers, and that's true. But the yield means the yield has to go higher. And as these yields go higher, we're looking at record interest rate payments for credit cards. I think they just cracked 25%. Store cards are 35%. Automobile loans, every kind of loan you can imagine are at record levels. As these yields go higher, everyone pays a heavy, heavy price. The only people who don't pay a heavy price, again, are the very rich who own a lot of bonds. How amazing is it that Chairman Powell, his job is to crush the economy by sending bond yields higher, and he's crushing the people who spent their stimulus money on the first day. And all the people who are sitting on the stimulus money, they don't care, because their bond portfolio has gone through the roof. We talked about this earlier today, death of democracy. Look back there in 1990. Democratic countries were on the rise big time. Something has gone absolutely wrong. Something has gone absolutely wrong. And unfortunately, it's going to be up to America somehow to turn it around or be that beacon on the hill. I don't think funding wars, to be quite frank with you, is the way to do it. Certainly not rebuilding nations that we had nothing to do with. We're going to spend trillions of dollars rebuilding Ukraine. Everyone in this room is going to have to spend money to rebuild Ukraine. We got to find something else. We got to figure, I don't know what the answers are per se, but I do know that this direction right here is scary stuff for the entire planet.